Everybody, I'm Kyle Lacotte, your host. Welcome back to another edition of VC TV. As I mentioned every single day and previously, it is a very, very important time here at VC TV and also for you, whether you're an investor or you're an entrepreneur. Why? Because it's Q3, quarter three, third quarter, however you want to define it. It is the sprint to the end of the year. This is when the most investment activity happens on both sides of the table ever during the year. And this is a very important time for you as well to pay attention to what's happening around technologies, around markets, around industries, and around regions in the world, and what that means for you and your fundraising or for those that are looking to make investments. So we've brought more around of the best and the brightest from various parts of the world to share what they're seeing in their regions and where they're seeing capital being deployed or where the opportunities are as well. So we're not going to waste any time. We're going to dive right in. With that being said, a big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in again to another double episode of VC TV. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, do drop them in the chat box. Thank you, Arena. And if you're an investor and you'd like to be on a show like today, or you'd like to talk about a specific topic, share your thoughts and insights, do reach out to the LATOKEN team, Elena and or myself. We'd love to find the right fit for you. Entrepreneurs, told you. This is the sprint to the end of the year. That's the most important time. This is not just a stage for investors. This is a stage for you. If you'd like the chance to get up here and pitch us as investors along with live audience, we'd love to have you. Do reach out and we'll find the best place for you. Big thank you to Elena and to the entire LATOKEN team for always making VC TV possible every single day on your screen, your device, anywhere in the world. And with that being said, I do want to kick things off and get right into it with each and every one of our investors, some new, some regular guests, as they've got a lot to share of what's happening around the world. First and foremost, Jason, welcome back to the show. I'm going to let you kick it off, going a little out of order on my EdTV view, but nonetheless, a little intro, a little background.
Great. Well, thank you for having me again. My name is Jason Jacobson with Propellant Ventures. We are a seed stage fund investing in Chicago and the greater Midwest in the US, based on primarily you're investing in B2B companies such as healthcare, fintech, edtech, supply chain, and future of work. I've been very active in the entrepreneurial community for 20 years, and so built a lot of relationships with the entrepreneurs and investors, and found my way into the venture capital industry. Worked at a firm previously that invested in companies that were led by University of Wisconsin alumni. And after my time ended there, I started my own firm last year. And so we made our first investment a couple months ago. Company is Supply Hive. It's a procurement tech business focused on supply chain, and they're based in Chicago. Again, thank you for having me here and glad to be here.
Wonderful, and congratulations on the investment as well. This is exciting. We've had Jason on a few times. He's been talking a lot about his fund and what he's been doing in the Midwest, and very supportive of what you're doing. And congratulations on that. We'll even give you a little emoji clap for that as well. I don't have a soundboard, so that's what you get, buddy. There you go. Look at that. Claps all around. It's magic. All right, Bogdan, welcome to the show for the first time here with Elena and I on VC TV. A little intro and a little background.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. My name is Bogdan. I represent a ventures capital, which is a combination of seed stage VC and investment banking boutique with a focus on technology. So as at seed stage funds, we are looking for the most promising companies out of the CE region, which are targeting global markets, primarily the United States. And as investment advisors, we typically work with companies which fall outside our focus, so mostly late stage, growth stage technology companies, and we work with them as M&A and fundraising advisors.
I love it. Well, welcome to the show. And Dennis, also welcome to the show. First time here on VC TV with Elena and I. Intro and background.
Sure. Wonderful to meet everyone virtually, and thank you, Kyle, for having me on this show. My name is Dennis Ben. I'm managing partner at Our Crowd, which is Israel's most active venture capital fund. My background, I've been a serial entrepreneur. I sold one of my companies and I I invested in quite a number of companies privately. Then I co-founded a company, Pocket Guide, which became the world's leading travel application, moved to Palo Alto. And 8 years ago, I ran into someone called John Madvet, who is probably Israel's most iconic VC investors. And he had this idea to kind of, venture capital kind of disrupted every single industry, but venture capital has not been disrupted. So, and the idea was that what we saw, that more and more of the family offices and the corporate, especially the corporations, they don't want to invest in a blind pool, but they want to pick and choose the deals. So we created this unique platform, which is basically a VC platform, but the investors can pick and choose the deals. So 8 years later, we are $1.5 billion AUM. We have 200 portfolio companies. We have 18 funds. So you can put money into a fund, or you can just pick and choose the deals. And we do a little bit of everything. We are stage and industry agnostic.
I love it. Where can everyone find the company to get started as well? Is it ourcrowd.com?
Ourcrowd.com, correct.
There you go. All right. Noble, welcome back to the show. Good to see you. A little intro, a little background. Noble, we can't hear you. All good.
Can you hear me better?
Loud and clear.
So yeah, I'm with Dracone Capital Partners. We work with pre-seed, seed, early stage companies. We work with a group called M Accelerator, which is an accelerator incubator in Los Angeles. We are in the middle of a $40 million raise for our venture fund. I've been in the investment space for almost 26 years, both as a retail broker as well as a hedge fund operator in the commodities market, as well as operating as CEO for a startup venture in augmented reality and virtual reality experiential events. So glad to be here, Kyle.
Wonderful and glad to have you back. And Maya, welcome back to the show as well. Little intro, little background.
Thank you. So hello from Minnesota. I'm here visiting from Lagos, Nigeria, where I was during the last episode and where I live. So my name is Maya Horgan Famodu. I run Ingressive Capital, which is a $10 million early stage VC fund investing in tech and tech-enabled businesses in Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, and Egypt. We also have Ingressive for Good, which is a non-skills development and talent placement to African youth. And I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. And absolutely. And just a quick follow-up. So a little bit more about Ingressive Capital for those who may not know. What stage do you invest at? Just any kind of sector or anything in particular rather than just technology?
Yeah, we do pre-seed.
We may have lost Maya. So Maya does pre-seed and seed. Definitely someone to reach out to. We may lose her again, but as she comes back, we'll make sure she gets that shout out to everybody. We're going to hold on that. So Maya, if you can hear me, just hold 1 second. We'll come back to you on that. Irina, to you, welcome back to the show. I know you've got a... All right, we're good. We know you got a busy day. You're already speaking at another conference. You got a ton going on. A little introduction, little background for those who may not know. And Maya, if you can hear me, just go one moment. We'll be bringing right back to you. So go ahead, Irina.
My name is Irina Litchfield. Some people know me as Crypto Superwoman. I am a president of Lumeria, where my goal is to connect capital to innovation. We specialize on companies B round, C round plus, giving liquidity to secondary as well as public offering, and it is through auction-based securities exchange.
Wonderful. And to kick things off, as we again have a ton to talk about today, Irina, I'm going to start with you. What is the current state around fundraising right now? I mean, again, it is Q3. There's a ton happening, but what are you seeing happening?
I see a lot of deployment happening right now. We're definitely at a point to where venture capitalists need to, and people with wealth, independent wealth, need to deploy their money. There are a lot of opportunities available. I believe that finally that we're comfortable with being virtual. We're kind of building a new pathway. So space industry is blooming unbelievably. What was really kind of a bottlenecking is opening up quite a bit. Obviously, DeFi is growing exponentially. So I think that from most factors that I see, there's a lot of deployment happening right now.
And one quick follow-up on that, actually, too. Space DeFi, decentralized finance is a crazy world. There's too much to unpack, but we're, I think, almost somewhere between $7 and $9 billion that are totally locked away in value there. It fluctuates almost by $1 billion every other day. But in space, what are you seeing as kind of the areas that a lot of capital is being deployed at currently, or deep tech in general?
That's a great question. So what space experiencing right now is overfunding of launching. Okay, so space, in a whole space sector, launching takes about 6% of the whole industry. 48% of funding goes to launch. So the good thing about it is that it allows us to build an infrastructure, and now the tool builders can actually come into the industry and have platforms to launch themselves and provide services. Big growth is happening exactly in the service providers, right? So if you're a gas station in a space, and if you're building an ecosystem that provides sustainable living, it is very interesting. The most important thing that we're seeing that takes the biggest traction is those space companies that can clearly show growth and traction here on Earth. So it's kind of a mixed model. If you're building habitat for Moon for 4 people, for example, to sustainably have it on the Moon, it really benefits and scales very well here on Earth, especially during current times.
Wonderful. And then Bogdan, I want to come to you, and Maya, we see your back, so I'm going to come to you after this. But Bogdan, to you, what are you seeing as the current state of fundraising as we sit here in Q3 right now of 2020?
Yeah, if you're talking about the CE region, we saw a slowdown during the first 2 quarters, but then actually in summer, the deal activity bounced back, and right now, if we're talking about the CE region, we see more investment activity than we saw last summer. So, for example, last week, Ukrainian company Restream raised $50 million from Inside Partners and Subhaya Ventures. So we are also seeing 2 companies which are closing similar rounds of a similar size. Also, as investment bankers, we are right now closing one M&A deal, which is also quite large for the region. So, and like all of this is done virtually. So during Q1 and Q2, like some investors, they paused their activity because they kind of they were not used to investing remotely and doing due diligence remotely. So, but after a while, like majority of investors, they just got used to the new reality, and if in the Q2 we only saw small deals, like a few mil deals done remotely, right now we are seeing even kind of deals in excess of $10 million done completely remotely without site visits and without personally meeting the founders. So
it's definitely a new experience, right? It's we're not sitting in the office doing the same type of partner meetings or having coffee with an entrepreneur for the first time, but yet we're not seeing too much of a drastic change as we come into this part of the year. To your point, Bogdan, we saw a little bit of a slowdown, but things are starting to tick up, and we'll get to what that means and what that doesn't mean in terms of the investment style here shortly. But Maya, I want to come back to you. So 2 things before we get to the current state. Ingress, you were mentioning you invest around pre-seed and also some sectors, and if you could restate that for the audience, and then what are you seeing as the current state?
Sure. Sorry about that. I think I had some technical issues. Interesting that my internet's better in Nigeria than it is in Minnesota. But what I was saying is, so we invest in pre-seed and seed stage technology. And so that means the company has established product market fit. They have their team together with an in-house technical talent. They're generating, revenue, or they have that, significant 30% plus month over month growth in their user base or what have you. So it's a small startup, it's established, but we're probably their first institutional investor. So they're probably the first venture capital fund that's investing in the company. They've done their angel round, they have maybe some initial seed funding, or maybe we're even the first check. So that's about where we come in, post-launch, post-traction, but very early stage. And just tech-enabled, so B2B tech-enabled solutions, and we'll also do B2C financial services or telecommunication startups, but mainly in the B2B area on the continent. And then as far as what we're seeing, so in Q2, there was about a 57% decrease in the amount of venture capital dollars that was invested in entrepreneurs relative to the quarter before. We saw a general slowdown in both the number of deals and the total VC dollars invested. However, there were some sizable Series A and post-seed deals. What's interesting is they're not being publicized. People are really keeping the tickets that they're raising private, and that's, I think, for a number of reasons. One, they don't want to be targets for government activity or government additional regulation, and also on the continent, I don't think it's like this in at least the rest of the Western world, but sometimes when you have a big raise, then your vendors increase their pricing, and everyone's hurting right now in COVID season, and so it's better for the entrepreneurs to sort of keep their raises under wraps. As far as what we're seeing is a lot of we have actually had the quarter with the most investments we've deployed in total, and we launched this fund in 2017. And so, as I mentioned the last time, right in Q2, we made the largest investment that we had to date in a founder where we had only done diligence with the team and only interacted with the team via Zoom. So we've never met them in person preceding the investment, and that's sort of becoming the norm for us. But we are also figuring out, as I mentioned before, new ways to sort of balance that by increasing the number of recommendations from previous investors, or doing more consumer reviews, or diligence around the actual entrepreneur, which is a more objective way of doing diligence we're finding in general. So the market did slow down Q2, Q3, where people are figuring out, okay, the Zoom thing really can work. And as a venture capitalist, we all have deployment targets, and we can't just stop investing because there's a pandemic. So being very conscious of those sort of COVID-proof business models, as opposed to those that are thriving in this period and may not thrive, say things go back to how they used to be, whatever that means. And so we're actively investing. The ecosystem has reawakened, and we're anticipating a sort of increase in investments for Q3 into Q4.
And I think you're bringing up a lot of good points too, and just of general what you're seeing and how diligence has changed. And we're going to come to that. Before we keep going around, Irina, I know you have to jump. You've got a big keynote to give. So I want to make sure you get a quick piece of advice in for those, as you have been taking pitches remotely quite often. What advice would you give those, following Maya's point, as she's doing more diligence and learning that balance? What advice would you give to those entrepreneurs that are looking to fundraise during this time? And then where can everyone find you online as you have to depart?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I wish I could stay longer, but I have to run, and I'm so grateful to be back in person gatherings. I'm at the North American Space Summit, and so it's wonderful to see that. By the way, it is sponsored and co-organized by Air Force, so I think it's a wonderful thing to see that they are leading the way for us to coming back to this in-person gatherings, right? They're implementing the best practices, and it's just a wonderful way, I think, for us all to get back to that state. So good job, Mama and NASA and Air Force. Keep up a good job. So my advice, I would say that make sure that your deck is clear with what you're doing. Make sure that I, as an investor, have a desire to know more, and not in a critical way, right? So make it to where I want to have a follow-up questions. The most important thing to me is that when an entrepreneur is going through the pitch, and as an investor giving entrepreneur an advice on how to improve it. If entrepreneur wants funding from that investor, they should improve on those points and get back to the investor with those points, because that communicates the relationship. And that's one of the most important things to remember, is that your investors are your partners. And in a traditional kind of a venture structure, we don't really have a secondary ability to exit, right, for as a secondary holders, which, by the way, Lumeria is fixing through the auction-based exchange. But I think that that's the thing you must keep in mind, is that it is a relationship, and remember that and nurture it. Don't go and promise them relationship and then just disappear off the face of the earth. Okay.
Cool.
And you can find me. Irina Litchfield, Google me. It will give you a million options.
Rockstar. Go crypto superwoman. Go do you. Talk about space. We'll see you later. Jason, back to you. I want to come to you next around the current state of fundraising. I mean, you're putting a lot of bets in the Midwest right now. What are you seeing as kind of the current state of investment activity here in Q3?
Yeah, I see activity. We had a slowdown like a lot of people, but we at the same time, all the good companies find money. There's still plenty of money out here, and many of the early stage VCs in the Midwest are still very active. I would say some slow down their activity, but I see it ramping up again pretty soon. And we talked a little bit about finding opportunities and evaluating deals remotely. That's something I've done my entire career in the venture capital space. My last fund, we rarely met the entrepreneurs or the investors in person. So it can be done. I know it's a paradigm shift for some investors and entrepreneurs, but it can definitely be done, especially if it's technology. You don't necessarily need to see a physical office. But again, I see a lot of activity. One of the local investors in town did 6 deals since March, for example. So the fact is, good deals find capital, and there's plenty of money out there to invest. So Midwest has always been a pretty good region to invest in. The valuations are generally lower. Cost of living is more reasonable. There's a lot of tech talent here. And a lot of companies, especially in the B2B space, focus on revenue and a path to profitability. And so we have some of the highest investor returns out of any region in the US. So good deals here, good funding. We've had a lot of big funding rounds recently, and I see more of those happening in Q3 into Q4 as well.
I love it. Thank you very much. And Dennis, to you, I mean, what are you seeing? You've got a massive platform here with our crowd and seeing not just funds, but also direct deals. What are you seeing as the current state of fundraising here currently in Q3?
Sure. So I'm wearing a little bit of 2 hats. So if you look at the global market, so I think the most indicative index is the Bloomberg, startup barometer, which kind of this index incorporates both the money flowing into VC deals and also as well as exits. So if you look at the numbers, they are down. They are down between 40 to 50%. I think the last time I looked, it was around 38%. So that's US. When you look at Israel, actually, the new records. So the first half, again, Israel, when you look at invested, the money flowing into the Israeli VC markets, we see it, again, new records. And we are also following the same trend. We did, I think, over 20 deals since the beginning of February. Really we're looking for, there are great deals out there. I think I agree with what Jason just said, that there is plenty of money out there. I think they are much more cautious, and they are looking for relevant deals. So I think the startups have to kind of show that they are relevant to the Corona and also for the post-Corona world. But I think good deals will find money.
Absolutely. And Noble, to you, same question. What are you seeing as the current state right now?
Yeah, I mean, we do things a little bit differently. We've been working with our accelerator / incubator. So we've always had a physical presence in which we had a lot of the participants join our cohorts physically. So there has been a paradigm shift in how my relationship with M Accelerator has been in just interacting with a lot of participants who are just globally now, but are online, and trying to vet and understand the psychology of the founders. You know, we're very people are focused and driven in that component of what we do. So it's always great when we're interacting with them for 2 months and 3 months at a time. Nevertheless, I personally have still done about 4 deals individually, but it's all been in DeFi and FinTech because it's an area that I understand and have been involved in for a long time. So it's, you know, it's kind of that what you're doing personally and professionally, the difficult things that you're kind of dealing with. But what we also discovered, because we consult private, small companies and interacting with private investors, that a lot of the accredited investors are a lot more aggressive right now because their concerns are kind of flight to safety. You know, they're looking towards gold. They're thinking the stock market is probably too high or overinflated. And so a lot of the, I guess not necessarily angel, but, at the level of angel investors are trying to find these particular outlier opportunities that present themselves properly during, the next phase of what we're dealing with, whether it's a post-COVID world or an extension of COVID activity. So we're seeing a lot of people kind of trying to rush in and look at deals for this third quarter because they're going to be silent completely in the fourth quarter. And, once they get to the fourth quarter, they're not going to make any investments, and their anticipation is that they're going to be looking towards the first part of next year to do things. So we've seen the private investors, and I don't know if you guys know, but the SEC changed the rules and are headed into where they're looking at they're changing the bar of what an accredited investor is to being just professionals in general. And that's made a big wave that we've discovered in our database of, we have a few 100,000 accredited investors, but between the professionals who want to participate now with private companies that are showing opportunities for profitability and outlier returns. So I think there's about 3 different levels of investors, and a lot of the dry powder that we know on the VC side and the family offices that I deal with, they're kind of on halt, to be frank. They're looking at stuff, but they're being very picky and choosy over what they have, regardless of the amount of capital that they're sitting on. And so you have to really have a real commanding case to get them to move the button. It has to really fit within their thesis to drive them to make the investment. They're not going to really take a lark on something that doesn't really fit where their overall model is. But on the other side, the private investors, the credit investors, some angel investors are willing to try out these new opportunities. So on the pre-seed seed level, I think that's really your best bet to get anywhere from 1 to 5 million, to be honest.
Yeah, and that brings up kind of my next question is as capital's being deployed, and Maya kicked us off on this, so I'm going to come back to you, Maya, first on this, is investing in this particular way with so much capital, so much changing, so much aggressiveness around the industry right now in terms of activity. What are some of the lessons learned? I mean, is investing in this form a positive, or have there been some lessons learned? As I've seen a lot of activity from other investors out there that have spoken that this has been a great experience for them. It's also been a very challenging experience and some hard lessons learned of making those investments without doing maybe a little bit more extended diligence. So Maya, to you, I mean, what are some of the lessons that you've learned during this time of investing more Zoom-like or virtually, I'll say, rather than meeting in person?
Yeah, so we actually have had, I can say across the board, we've had positive experiences, both internally with our team, with the entrepreneurs in the pipeline that we're generating, and the quality of deals that we're investing in, the outcomes with those deals. Firstly, as far as the team dynamics, it really, our team has always from day one, because this is my work style, it's like we just give deliverables to the team members, monthly or weekly, and it's like you complete them whenever you want to complete them, come into the office or don't, as long as they get done, it works. And we're finding that work doesn't have to be set to such a specific and rigid schedule. You have to come in 9 to 5, you have to work at this, you have to be sitting down at your desk for these hours, which actually is not optimal productivity for a majority of people. And also being able to sort of adjust business focus and business deliverables aligned with what people are truly good at and what they really want to work on. And that only just increases productivity. So we've been actually able to objectively track each team member's performance based on their key deliverables, as opposed to the sort of less relevant ideas of how many hours they sat in their desk. And so we've just been seeing internally increased performance and productivity in the team individually, and that leading to a better progress of the business at large, and each individual team member paying more close attention to the overall objectives of the business, as opposed to their micro, today I have to send 20 emails and so it's been good for that, leveraging, the Asana, the apps and the workflow tools, and has been really productive. On the other side, as far as the type of companies that we're investing in and sort of the outcomes with that, we are very early stage investors. And so we are investing, not paper napkin ideas, but, post-launch, early stage, generating initial users. There's still a lot, within generally the first year of business, there's still a lot of gray area when we're making those initial investments anyways. And we're really betting on the total addressable market, like the total market size. Is this $1 billion opportunity? We're betting on the founding team. Like, do they have core technical talent? How long have they known each other? What's their past experience? Do they have industry expertise? And the defensibility of the product. Of course, there's a million and one other things, but that's just sort of diluted down to our main focus. And with this sort of digital revolution, I guess we're going to call it that, an optimistic twist. We're really finding that we can, again, hone down on the most important key components of diligence. And there are proxies for this trust building. Before you grab a coffee and you sit in the founder's office and you're like, I like that guy. I trust him. He's going to do great things. And that's great. You have your gut instinct. And sometimes that's objective. And sometimes that's completely subjective and based on your own personal biases. And so what we're finding is we're getting into spaces that we've never before invested and interacting with entrepreneurs that we might have overlooked before, because of this whole, like, my gut tells me he's a good guy, or she's a smart girl. Like, no, let's go talk to their former employers. Let's talk to the rest of their team members. Let's talk to their competitors, their customers, people that they've interacted with in past lives, and get a really actually objective understanding of what the quality of the business is. That's on one side of things. And then also being able to assess the market by actual objective market dynamics as we're looking now. We're not, transitioning 100% over to financial models, et cetera, but we have reached a very nice balance of taking, real facts, real market growth, and comparing that with objective analyses that we get from the sort of circle surrounding the entrepreneur. So we found it better with that. And then as far as our pipeline and deal flow, now we're seeing more than ever, you don't need a passport to raise money from Silicon Valley investors. You don't need, to be sitting in the same office as whomever. Twitter is literally everyone's visa to raise money from anyone in the world. I can tweet at whomever. Entrepreneurs on the continent are becoming so much more confident and really actually raising so much more capital from foreign investors by leveraging social media, which really is the visa of the future. So I'd say that's helped those outside of these sort of tech bubble hubs get access to the brain trust, and as well as the actual financials, the capital from those previously isolated areas.
And Jason, to add on to that, I mean, again, what else are you seeing? Is this a positive and negative? What lessons are you learning as investors as well?
Yeah, I think the more people realize that you can make investments this way. As I mentioned before, the last fund I was part of, we did all of everything pretty much remote. We rarely met the entrepreneur or the investors that invested in our fund. We were industry, stage, and geographic agnostic. So this is fairly normal for me. The first investment we made did not meet the CEO until after we invested in the company. I knew the investor who brought the deal to us, so that helped. And there was some familiarity, and I know as co-founder from a previous business, but did not need to meet him. And most of our deals, at least with our first fund, we're going to be a co-investor. So we're going to look at the quality of the lead investor, so that helps. And so I don't feel we need to meet with the entrepreneur. Now, since we're focused on Midwest and in the region, if there's someone in my backyard and I have a chance to meet with the entrepreneur, I will, but it's not necessary. So I just think this is it's normal for me, but for a lot of investors, especially some of the bigger VCs out west or out east that have been doing this for a long time, like the water cooler conversation, hallway conversation, but they realize right now that, at least I believe, you can still do deals without meeting the entrepreneur, especially as I mentioned before, if it's a technology or software business. There's not a factory you need to go necessarily to look at any physical product. You can still do due diligence remotely. You can have a technical person look into the technology. You can talk to people on the phone. You can do all the things you would have done normally in person, but really, I don't think you need to do it all in person. And it's more cost effective and efficient use of your time as well. You don't have to meet with every single person because investors get a lot of companies coming their way and a lot of opportunities. So if you don't meet with everyone, that will save time as well. So I think this is a good thing, and it will streamline some of the investment processes around there and make things a little bit easier for people, especially for entrepreneurs also to get in front of investors.
Absolutely. Dennis, to you, same question. I mean, you've been working remotely, it sounds like, for many years with companies through our crowd, but what else are you seeing in terms of positive, negatives during this time?
So I agree very much with what Maya and Jason said. Really, they summarized it wonderfully. But on the other hand, I would like to add a little bit, maybe a little bit challenge a little bit what they said, because I think the earlier you invest, the more you invest in the founder, and I think all of us agree on that. And there is something missing. There is something missing there. Meeting one-on-one, I mean, on person, feeling his energy. We can do, so I agree with Maya and Jason totally that doing the due diligence and all the analysis, that's actually, it's even, there is a silver lining here because it's much more cost effective and the time efficiency. But again, the earlier you invest, it's more depends on the founder, and there is something inherently missing when you meet the founder one-on-one and feel his energy, feel his interaction. At the end of the day, he is not just a tech person. You have to understand his charisma, his leadership abilities, his managerial skills, and I think you cannot 100% assess that through online communications.
And guys, we're coming up to the lightning round, so I want to jump in with one or two more big questions, and that's kind of, where are the opportunities right now? Where is capital going to in terms of sectors or industries that you may be seeing most? So Noble, let's start with you, and then Bogdan, we're going to come to you. Where are you seeing capital really being deployed here as we come into Q3 and looking towards the end of the year?
Just to echo Dennis, I just want to say one thing. I 100% agree. This is a grand experiment. And so next year, when we ask this question, we'll know whether or not this experiment worked. So it's one of those things that people, particularly smaller funds or venture funds that are going outside their thesis or going outside their normal purview, even us being able to work with cohorts across the globe, we'll know more importantly next year how well we were in making deployments based on just screen only, even though we've been doing in person for the last 2.5 years. I think majority of the deployment that we like is in entertainment. So I'm the CEO of Where Play Games. So, we're deploying 5 new games. We have an AR game coming out, in addition to our investment in other AR applications and VR applications and XR applications that go through the entertainment side. I love DeFi. I love crypto. Name that crypto, the distributed ledger technology, more importantly, the DLT component of it, more so in studying supply chains. And, Irina left, but of course, anything that has to do with burgeoning industries that are at their infancy, both DeFi and space. And so if you're in those particular areas, it's always great to reach out to me.
Bogdan, to you, what are you seeing as areas of opportunity right now where capital is being deployed?
Yeah, COVID accelerated digital transformation for large corporations, which were forced to kind of switch to remote work. So, and that's why we see an outsized demand from investors for quality B2B SaaS companies which solve problems with remote work, collaboration, security, etc. So probably right now we are mostly focusing on enterprise SaaS industry. So we believe there is long-term trend in there. Also, I would say that the second priority for us AI-enabled companies. So basically, sometimes they kind of a part of enterprise SaaS segments, but in some cases, this is a separate industry. So, for example, actually, right now, probably the hottest company in Central and Eastern Europe is AI company, which is called, apart from UiPath, of course. So the company called Reface AI, which is already like number 2 or 3 on their app store in the United States. So this is AI-driven company, not enterprise SaaS, but consumer focused, but still we see lots of high quality deep tech teams in Ukraine, Russia, Poland, and from time to time we see success stories in this area, regardless of the economic conditions of whether there is a pandemic or not. So there will be demand for quality AI products.
And Jason, to you, I mean, where else are you seeing capital being deployed right now?
I think healthcare, digital healthcare, and telehealth specifically is getting capital. Bogdan mentioned supply or future work. I see that. Supply chain is also something that is getting investment. And I think certain parts of fintech for sure are getting more interest. Even food tech or food delivery is potentially being disrupted, especially with the big merger with Grubhub and the other company, I forgot their name, but the fact is there's innovation, there's opportunity to innovate within that space. So, but I think, enterprise is definitely a good area of a lot of growth and investment right now, just in general across different industries.
Absolutely. I mean, back to what Maya mentioned around the digitization. I mean, this is the time. If you're building for enterprise, this is your moment. Rock and roll. Even though it may be a slow cycle, go for it. Every company is looking to figure out how to digitize or how to make moves into this new decade ahead. This is the moment. And Dennis, to you, what areas else are you seeing in terms of opportunity? And then Maya, and we'll come to closing thoughts.
So I think as I mentioned at the beginning, if you're the deals that are most relevant today is the companies that you have to focus on companies that are relevant, that have a product market fit for both the Corona and for the post-Corona world. I mean, just look what happened today on the public markets. I didn't check it in the last hour, but Zoom is up 40% again, and DocuSign is up over 15%. And I think it's true that many investors will look for liquidity. I'm talking about now on the private market, so in VC. However, smart investors should be out there on the offense, and there is less competition, many good deals becoming more available, especially I think in the next 6 to 12 months. And I think what relevance means is doesn't just necessarily means medical. That's everybody immediately thinks about medical, but it includes everything within this new normal. Companies with robotics, automation, obviously remote work, distance learning, home-related activities, communication infrastructure. I think deep tech and interdisciplinary tech will be more important than ever. And I think also what we have to remember as investors that if you look back to the last 20 years, that some of the best companies were built in bad times. And if you look at venture investing specifically, we often see that vintages during the crisis perform much better than no crisis vintages.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Maya, to you, any other additional opportunities, areas that you see where capital is flowing to right now? Maya, you might be on mute.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would say that mine are pretty aligned with the comments everyone else has shared, and absolutely about that opportunity presents itself when the market contracts. That's when businesses really start to care about their margins. That's when people are really looking to technology solutions to promote efficiency, and really care about the every dollar that's being made by their workforce, and the marketplace is sort of onboarding, getting access to new consumers. So I can say we definitely are starting to see a lot of SaaS technology. So on the continent, people are looking for sort of new markets in general. So pursuing the agriculture sector from a lending and getting sort of access to the wealth that exists in the agriculture and specifically within farmers and cooperatives. We're seeing a lot of those sorts of solutions. Then the traditional straight enterprise, like from beginning to end, the SaaS solutions that for HR services, for payroll efficiency, for sort of everything across the board. We're also seeing sort of like the third wave of financial services. The first was like B2B infrastructure. The second was more like payments and APIs, like Stripe for Africa type thing. And then the third, we're seeing sort of like those digital integrations, like the sort of open banking revolution and the digital banking from start to finish revolution, like no actual brick and mortar on the continent. And so that's been really interesting to see because the typical African consumer does have some fear of sort of digital transactions generally, and sort of trying to figure out the balance of offering an entirely tech-enabled solution with meeting the sort of fears of the culture. Of course, as previously stated, healthcare technologies. I'm seeing a resurgence again in drone delivery for pharmaceutical products, as well as the import-export logistics, like the Flexport for Africa. We've invested in Jetstream and some others that operate in the space, and really, yeah, looking at making movement of goods and services much more efficient. And then, yeah, of course, the digital training. So again, sort of like the open access platforms, and then the technology infrastructure that, or the internet that really powers the online services for the end consumer. So in innovations in ISP and also in fiber in general, and sort of the back end telecommunication space.
I love it. Guys, to the audience, if you're not paying attention and think there's not opportunity, there's a plenty of opportunity. We just went through about 20 different plus sectors where capital is being deployed. So as entrepreneurs and investors, you should have plenty to be looking at right now. And these are the investors that you should be reaching out to if you're looking at any of these investments to either co-invest with and or follow up to get further information. So everyone, we are at the top of the hour. I want to come to you for your closing thoughts and where everyone can find you. In your closing thought, if you could, one piece of advice to those that are fundraising right now in this type of environment, what they should know or what they should have prepared. So quick piece of advice, and then where can everyone find you online? Bogan, we're going to start with you. Quick piece of advice for those fundraising, and where can they find you online?
Yeah, I would say that in the current environment, investors became more open to cold emails, but still I suggest to find introduction to the relevant investors, since it will increase the odds that the investor will come back to you and will schedule a meeting. And you can always find me on LinkedIn. I try to be very responsive there.
Wonderful. Noble.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, as a founder, still be true to yourself. Don't try and chase the market. It never really works. You have to, no matter how many different things that were said here today, that doesn't change the fact that there's an investor out for your project if it doesn't fit in these spheres for whatever reason. And it's always easy to reach out to me, LinkedIn, Noble Dracone, or on Twitter @Dracone. And if you reach out to me, present value. Don't just ask for money. I get messages all the day, people asking money, but I don't really understand the problem solution set. And so with no problem solution set, you're just another person that's kind of in a sea of handout.
And context, where you saw the investor, where you heard them, where you met them, add context as well. Dennis, to you, piece of advice, where can everyone find you?
Sure. So my advice for startup is, first, in short, reassess everything you thought you knew about your business. I mean, being already 6 months in the crisis, I assume you already cut your burn, but think through and everything you knew about it, prior to crisis. And you have to reevaluate your whole business model. I want to see, as an investor, I want to see how you reevaluated your KPIs, the CAC LTV ratio, sales cycles, churn, lifetime value, etc. So, and then again, show me how you are thinking outside of the box, how you are staying crisis relevant. Just on a small little maybe feeling that I'm just also sharing with you, that because we are speaking online and doing most of the interaction online, it is much more important to pitch less and to speak less and to listen and engage more with the investors. So pitch as short as you can. Your pitch should be much shorter than in a general environment, and engage the investor as soon as you can, and let him drive the discussion, let him drive the questions. So instead of pitching, you really also serve, like in a way you're serving the investor, and you listen clearly what he wants to know from you. I think that's the way you build a relationship. And again, through online, it's much more difficult to sell yourself and sell your idea. And by engaging and speaking less, you have a much better opportunity.
Thank you. Jason?
I would say be positive. There is money out there, plenty of money out there, but you want to show that you have some traction, you have some value. Be creative and find ways to find investors. Warm introductions are always the best, but there are a lot of online activities where you can meet investors. And so whether it's online conferences or happy hours, whatever it is, take the opportunity to meet people as much as you can. And some people are meeting in person these days too. So find the opportunity to meet someone in person for a coffee or lunch, whatever, outside, inside, whatever you're comfortable with. But those opportunities are also there. So get back out there and start meeting with people. And people can find me at LinkedIn, as well as my email is jason@propellant.vc. Happy to take a look at something if you want to send it to me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jason. And Maya, close us out. Advice, and where can everyone find you? Oh, we can't. I think you might still be on mute.
Can you hear me now? Okay,
Yep.
Cool. First, I said this last time, I'll say it again. I want entrepreneurs to fundamentally understand that cold outreach is okay. I, again, started my fund when I was, 25, 26. I just wanted to be an analyst. No one would hire me. So I decided to launch a fund myself. And we've raised $10 million from no access, no connections in the industry. It's absolutely possible. You don't have to start with connections. You literally can base this on cold outreach. But when you do, keep it short, leave something relevant, and make sure it makes sense to them. And on that note, every interaction point you have with an investor is a data point. So just be mindful from your first outreach, demonstrating that you do research and you critically analyze by keeping it tight, concise, relevant to them. And then the last thing is, working in isolation can seem like it's the time to really just focus on the back end and sort of go into your cave, especially if you're an engineer. But don't forget the importance of collaboration. Now it becomes even more important, because how are you going to be generating your outreach? How are you going to be finding new talent? Dedicate actually in your calendar, if it's not natural to you, if you're naturally an introvert, just like being by yourself, time when you're going to be outreaching, even sending personal or professional text messages, because those serendipitous connections can still happen as long as you're sort of keeping that outreach going. And then lastly, make sure, like, burnout is real. Zoom burnout, don't get there. Make sure, like I have, 3 days a week for external meetings and 2 days a week for back end, or no meetings on my calendar at all, just to ensure that, this is a marathon and it's sustainable in the long term. So take care of yourself, and thus you will be taking care of your business.
Absolutely agreed. And thank you all for all the thoughts and insights that you shared today of what's happening around investment right now. To our audience, thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Do reach out if you'd like to be on a show like today. As all of our investors mentioned, they're all available. Cold outreach is okay. Make sure you add context. Thank you, Noble. Make sure you do your homework, but do reach out. They're all willing and ready to talk. Thank you, Jason, as well. And Big shout out and thank you to Elena and to the entire LA Token team for making VCTV possible every single day. Investors, thank you all again for sharing your thoughts and insights. Have a wonderful day on your side of the world, wherever you may be, and good luck with all the great opportunities that are coming your way. Dennis, thank you as well. And with that being said, I'm Kyle Lacotte, your host. We'll be back here tomorrow with more double episodes of VCTV. We'll look forward to seeing you soon. You can find me online at Kyle Lacotte on all social media. Talk soon.